What is going on, everybody? And welcome to the first edition of the Everyday Sens podcast. I am Jack Richardson alongside Brennan here, the face behind Everyday Sens for the past few seasons. You've known him on Twitter as Everyday Sens, on Instagram at everyday.sens. Brennan, this is exciting. We're getting started here with a podcast we've had in mind for a long time. And why don't you just talk a little bit maybe about the plans going forward with this and how we're going to expand the Everyday Sense brand.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, this is really exciting. We've been talking about this for a few months, I think, just the podcast in itself. So, you can talk a little bit about like our scheduling and stuff, but I think first off, Jack's going to be joining the website too, I guess, as a contributor. So, it's something that I never thought I would do, to be honest with you. I thought I was always just going to do it alone. I've run it for 5 years, and it's just been a grind. Like my deleted Instagram account and the Twitter account, but yeah, I mean, when we talked about the podcast, I thought about it and I was like, I read some of your stuff and I've seen you do all sorts of live streams and podcasts in the past and you do good work. So yeah, I'm happy to bring you on. And I think it's the potential, right? Like we have a good foundation of subscribers right now, but I think especially with the ownership stuff happening, man, there is so much potential with the team and not just for like everyday Sens, but just Sens fans, right? With where the team is going. There's so much positivity ahead. So awesome to have you and really excited.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're kind of hitting the ground running here, essentially, right? And this is my goal here to come is just contribute essentially like what I said for the writing and everything. You've built this beast, and I'm excited. I think the podcast can do some great things. So scheduling wise, we're gonna aim to do two a week in the off season and also during the season. We're gonna try and do a Monday and a Thursday or Monday and a Friday kind of thing, just to kind of recap weeks and preview weekends for the Sens during the season. But in the off season, we'll try and keep the same schedule, but that's always obviously subject to change. And we can also throw some, live streams here and there during games, after games, if it's a big win or a big loss or whatever, big firing. So lots of potential here. And so we'll just get started, I guess, today with just some there's a lot of stuff to talk about with the Sens, and there's off ice stuff, there's on ice stuff, there's management, coaching. I think the biggest question for all Sens fans going into the summer is number 12, and that's Alex DeBrincat. Last year at the draft in Montreal, Pierre Dorian made a swing for the fences and got a great deal for, I would say, a very touted player in Alex DeBrincat. It was a 7th overall pick, 39th overall pick, and then a second rounder this year as well. But now his contract is up and he needs a new deal. So, Brennan, what are your thoughts? Like initial thoughts about Alex DeBrincat. Is it keep? Is it get rid of him because he wants too much money? What's the mood for you going in to this very very important offseason question?
Yeah, I think it's keep for sure. I think it's on Pierre, whoever takes over if he gets fired. It's on them to get this done. I know DeBrincat is coming back with a decision on if he wants to stay. I don't know if that's reliant on the coaching staff being revamped or what it is. It's kind of what it sounds like. But I think number one priority this summer, sign Alex DeBrincat. I'm willing to pay this guy more than Brady and Tim because I don't care about the ego of we're paying him more than Brady and Tim. Who cares, right? It's a reference point, sure, but it's like I don't care if I look bad. I'd rather keep Alex DeBrincat because if you lose Alex DeBrincat, where are you at? Right now, you've got Claude Giroux who's going to be turning 36, and suddenly your second line is Josh Norris, and it's like, can Shane Pinto, can Ridley Gregg develop? Maybe, but I don't think you can rely on that. These guys are signed, their contracts are starting or have started, right? Like the window is now. You've got to win. If you lose Alex DeBrincat, you lose Claude Giroux soon. You're not going to find a better player than Alex DeBrincat on the market. You won't. You could maybe find like a Brock Besser level guy who's like a 50-point guy, 4 or 5 million, $6 million a year, but you're not going to replace Alex DeBrincat. So if you lose him, you're becoming a worse team. And for the short term and long term, that's just not what you want to see when your core is winning now. You got to win now.
Yeah, and that's part of why I wrote about why 2024 has all these expectations and this narrative that they're pushing, like, oh, we met our expectations of meaningful games down the stretch, and that's fine. And they did do that. They didn't set any playoff expectations for themselves, but the unbelievable pressure they've put now on 2024 is going to be a lot, and that's going to be the story whether they like it or not. And I think Claude Giroux himself actually answered this question about expectations going into next season, and he's like, we only have expectations because you guys asked, just the media, right? And then while that's fair from his perspective, it's also very fair from a fan and a media perspective to demand results now. This has been 6 years without playoff hockey in Ottawa, and they've now assembled this team that is a playoff caliber team, regardless of how they, even a couple injuries, they should be competing to make the playoffs next season, no doubt. So for me, Alex DeBrincat, obviously, you need to keep that guy because, like you said, that second line of Norris, and I guess you could throw Batherson on there too now, would struggle without Alex DeBrincat. It wouldn't be a 1A, 1B. It would be a second line that could possibly chip in here and there. So the problem is the money and the qualifying offer and everything because DeBrincat holds a tremendous amount of leverage for an RFA. So if he doesn't want to stay, let's say that's the biggest thing, and by all accounts right now, we don't know if he wants to sign long term or even sign in general. So it could just be a situation where a player doesn't want to play here, which is that's a whole other story. And if that's the case, I mean, he might become public enemy number one because, quite frankly, I don't know what else the Sens could have done to make him feel more welcome here. This is a pretty good environment, especially on the ice. Like I don't know if he'll find a better fit for his age and his play style. Maybe play style is a bit of a debate, but just the youth and the offense and everything. So if he doesn't want to stay, what would you look for in a trade? Because that becomes the pressing question next. The Sens need third line help, they need fourth line help, and they need goaltending help. So with all the pressure that's on 2024 in the playoffs, what are you looking for in a trade? Is it draft picks? Is it help right now? What's your mood for that?
Yeah, well, I think you're totally right, first of all, because like they did everything they could to make him feel welcome for sure. I think I can see why he's frustrated about this one season with having to play primarily with like obviously Pinto and Batherson are good players, but you're going from Patrick Kane, right? And then you're not playing with Tim Stützle or Claude Giroux as much. Like I know DeBrincat, Pinto, and Batherson played like 456 minutes together, and they got out like they had a negative 11 goal differential. So the line just didn't work, and they never really changed it. They kept going back to it. So I can see why he's frustrated, but at the same time, you look forward and it's like you're going to be playing with better players. I mean, Josh Norris is going to be back, so you can't just say, well, I'm not playing with good enough players and yada yada. Yeah, I definitely don't want to make him an enemy, but I could see it heading that way if he does want to leave, so hopefully it doesn't come to that. If he does, and we're talking about a trade, it gets complicated because like people get excited about the idea of 2 first round picks, for example. I don't even think you're going to get that, but even if you did, now you're waiting again though, right? You have to wait for these guys who they might become good players. You don't know. Draft picks are always kind of hit and miss. So it's like now you're relying on these draft picks, and it's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they're actually quality players. And suddenly, well, Tim Stützle signed for only like 2 or 3 more years, 4 years. You're starting to get down to the wire here, and we're not going to be able to keep the core. So in a trade, I mean, yeah, you'd want to get a 1st round pick, of course. I think you look at the goaltending route. I don't know which team would trade a future goaltender for that, but you look at Devin Levi who went to Buffalo in that trade for Reinhardt, and it's like, could you get a guy like that, right, who can step in sooner? Um, yeah, you could address depth for sure through a trade like that. I think you could get a good depth player too. I mean, there's going to be a long lineup of teams if he does want to get traded. That's the one thing. He's a 25-year-old with a proven 40-goal track record. Like these guys don't hit the market, right? Except for DeBrincat in Chicago. So if you're about to trade Alex DeBrincat, I mean, you're gonna have the leverage with the teams, but at the same time, if teams know that he is wanting out, right, requesting a trade, like Chikrin did, for example, suddenly it's gonna be, you're losing the leverage. So you're on a time crunch there. So I mean, the worst case is that he wants to be traded, in my opinion, and he makes that public. But if it comes to that, then yeah, I'd look goalie. I'd look to address the depth. I'd look for a 1st round pick. But it sets the team back if that happens.
Yeah, I think looking for any kind of immediate help is the way to go. I look immediately to the Matthew Tkachuk trade last summer. I mean, essentially the exact same situation contract wise as DeBrincat. On ice was a bit of a different situation, but from what we've heard recently and just all throughout the season, how Matthew Tkachuk, he wasn't a fan of Daryl Sutter. I've listened to some podcasts and he absolutely hated him. So if that's the case with DeBrincat and they bring DJ Smith back, which as the days go by here, it kind of looks like they will for at least the start of the season, which is another conversation that I think we can get into today. But uh, you know, that's if DeBrincat is look. I don't think that DeBrincat hates DJ Smith. I don't think he's saying that this team is trash because of him. Blah blah blah. Like he's just not standing on top of a mountain yelling that DJ Smith is the best coach, which some of the players have been doing and have vouched for him time and time again. So that obviously is going to raise some questions, and his play style of being a puck carrier is going to raise some questions. Now, DJ does implement a dump and chase kind of style. I don't think he gets enough credit for emphasizing the better players to hold on to the puck. I would say that where DeBrincat is kind of maybe talking about it being different, a different system than he's played. And also, just on that note, people think that DeBrincat played under Joel Quenneville for a bunch. He played under him for his rookie season, and then it was all Jeremy Colleton. Not a great coach either. So it's not like he was playing under some Jack Adams winner. He was playing under a different system, which is what he means. So that's a hard thing to adjust to. So I understand that. I just for DJ, I think what DeBrincat was asked to do is be more physical and just forecheck differently than he does, and that can mean adjustment for a player. So here's a good way to put this. If Brady Kachuk and Tim Stützle are going to Pierre Dorian and being like, "We like DJ, we want to keep him," and Alex DeBrincat is saying, "I want a new coach," I don't imagine that that's what's happening. If that's kind of the general vibe, you've got two star players, your two best players saying, "We like this coach, we got to keep him," and the guy who needs a new deal, who just got here, saying, I would like a change of scene or a change of voice behind the bench. What would you do if you're GMPD?
Yeah, in theory, that's a good question. I just wonder if they would say that or if what they were saying to the media is just kind of like what they're saying to the media, right? Are you just saying that because he's still your coach? And I mean, they obviously they like him. Every player seems to like DJ as a guy. You're not going to be rude and be like, yeah, I hate this guy. No, because DJ's a good person. He's a good motivator. He's a nice guy. He's a friend, sure. It's just that's not how you win, though, is not by like, yeah, we love DJ Smith, says Brady and Tim, but you didn't win. You haven't won anything. You haven't like achieved. I mean, individually, yes, but they haven't achieved anything as a team yet. So I don't know. There's two ways. I mean, if Brady and Tim are going and saying we got to keep DJ, then I mean, you got to keep DJ, I guess, right? Because those are two of your top guys and the heart in the room. So you can't really go against them. You're going to start creating tension there, and that's the last thing you want. If they're saying that, yeah, keep them. But again, I can't. I don't know. I can't really believe that they are totally in favor, especially when you've got Claude Giroux, who again hasn't said anything bad about DJ, but he's never really said anything overly good either. It just seems like he's, you've seen those clips in the season where he seems a little frustrated with the coaching, and he's like almost doing his own coaching. I can't imagine Claude Giroux is going to go into that room after the years he's had under different coaches and be like, yeah, DJ needs to be back. I think, you've got that mentor, and he's probably kind of exhibiting those vibes. Like, I've played under different coaches and different systems, and this team can win. He said it, but they're not quite there. And it feels like the one thing that needs to change is that coaching. So, I mean, if Brady and Tim want it, it's going to happen. I just don't know that they actually do.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it all comes down to those exit meetings because a lot was made last season about Shabbat and Kachuk going into Dorian's office and saying, "Hey, look, we're tired of getting draft picks. Get us some players." Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but it was along those lines. So the exit meetings are important, and I believe every exit meeting happened either right before or right after every player did their final media session. So it was kind of a I'm assuming they're getting the same kind of questions back to back. So it's interesting to think about in that sense. Um, you think about a new coach for this team. I can't think of an easier role to step into. Like this isn't a broken animal that you got to fix. This is a primed team that needs a little bit of tweaking here and there that could absolutely take off. I've been back in Ottawa for the last week or so and talking to a lot of my friends who have been obviously watching them all season, and the sense is that this team can absolutely do some damage, not just make the playoffs, but be an absolute contender in the next few seasons. So what would you, if you had to pick one thing that needs to change, what would it be for this team to not just sneak into the playoffs and be better down the stretch than they were this year, but to contend for the Atlantic Division title? Like, because that's the standard I'm prepared to hold them to next season, just because of how long we've gone without playoffs here and how much money has now been invested into this core.
For sure, yeah. I know people won't like me harping on it as much, but I think still coaching. I'm still coming back to coaching. I just think that you need to see these players in a different situation. Like I need to see them focus on skill. I know in the playoffs would be interesting with the grit type of style where you're being physical and stuff. I mean, DJ's system might work. I just don't know if it'll get them there. You got to get to the playoffs first. So I come back to that. I think obviously staying healthy is one thing. I mean, the injuries just plagued them the last 2 years, 3 years. It just kind of builds up. Depth as well, and then goaltending. These are the main things you got to hit on now for whoever's GM, right, and for Pierre. Um, Aside from coaching and aside from off the ice. But I think too, just the vibes are going to be so good with ownership and stuff coming in too that I feel like the team's going to take a step regardless. I think they're going to make some good moves this summer. Like, I'm prepared for it. I'd be shocked if they go in with Dylan Gambrell on the third line next year. So I think they're going to take a step next year. But I mean, so are most teams, right? There's a lot of good teams. It's competitive. So it's important for Pierre or whoever comes in to address the needs this summer and make the right moves.
I think it's timely, obviously, that we're talking about it now because the first round of the playoffs is going on, and man, it's just a different game. It's so entertaining to watch, and we can salivate about different Sens players being involved in a playoff game. Like everyone's always thinking about Brady Tkachuk. I'd love Tim Stützle in that setting. I think he'd thrive in the playoff atmosphere. It's painful that they haven't been there yet, but it's exciting at the same time. It's like a bittersweet feeling, right? Because you know they're going to get there. But it's interesting because not that I think DJ is the guy to get them there, but I think the way that they play now, I'm thinking back to that game, the last one against Philly. It was when Ryan Reynolds, potential owner, was in the building. It was an absolute gong show of a game, and I feel like the Sens kind of thrive on that, and that's what the playoffs are. That's where when it gets dirty and when it's a scrum after every whistle and like just stuff like that. I think the Sens as a group, not just Kachuk and Stutzel, but like their whole team. It's a contagious culture. So it's kind of interesting to think about it in that way. Like this team is built for the playoffs. A lot of people have been saying it online. I tweeted out yesterday just Ottawa deserves playoff hockey, and I got some strange, government related comments thinking like people are thinking it's a government like it was very strange. But what I meant is like this city in like the fans deserve it. Like it's every restaurant you go to now has hockey everywhere, and it's because people love the sport here. So I think that what Dorian has done is build a playoff team. It's just a matter of getting there because that's another grind. So that brings me to my next point, and the next thing I want to talk about is Pierre Dorian. I would say probably a very hot and cold tenure so far as GM. How do you analyze his time? Because it's been very dark and it's been very bright in the last. I'd say the last 10 months have been pretty good for Dorian. But where do you stand on the general manager?
Yeah, you're right. Recently, I stand in a pretty good spot with him. I mean, he's made some good deals. I think the underrated part, like everybody looks at trades, but I think the contracts were a big thing. I think signing, I mean, that Tim Stützle contract, I can't believe the entire league was hating on that when he signed that, saying it was an overpay. And the next year he goes and gets 90 points. He's like a top 30 player. That is going to be one of the best contracts for the next 8 years. I promise you it already is. Um, but even like you got Brady, you got all these guys. I don't think they have a bad contract long term, which is awfully impressive for a core that they have. Like it's a good core. Even the only way you could maybe construe that there's a bad contract is health. If Josh Norris can't stay healthy, then you're paying a guy 8 million. But I'm not gonna go there yet. Um, I'm okay with Pierre. I'm on better terms with Pierre than DJ for my analysis perspective, just because I think Pierre, like I like the Chikrin trade too. I think he's done a lot of good things. He made, I just wonder because he hasn't done anything overly bad since like Melnick left. Melnick passed away, unfortunately. I'm not gonna talk poorly or anything, obviously, but it's no coincidence. I think it was obvious that he was kind of strapped, right? Like he had a budget he had to stay under and moves he had to make that weren't necessarily the most ideal for the on ice aspect of the team. And now since then he's been good with the reins off. So I do kind of like I'm open to seeing Pierre some more. I know people they're back and forth on that. But I think with the contracts alone, I'm quite impressed by that. What I really think is they need to expand the pro scouting. That's what they need help with. Is Pierre's never been the best pro scout. I think Ryan Bonus has helped with that as assistant general manager since he came from Pittsburgh. But they really need to expand that front office and get people in there to help Pierre. Because I mean, Pierre can facilitate the trade, but you need guys to scout the players that you're going to acquire. Because acquiring a bad contract now could put them in a real dangerous spot.
Yeah. How do you think Ryan Bonus is feeling now with the entire Pittsburgh management team canned just a year after he leaves? Like that was a prime job for him, I feel like, but maybe he would have been part of it. I don't know, but
Yeah, he must be
Yeah,
feeling pretty good now, actually.
yeah, he's got a job, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the best part. So, I like those points, especially about the contracts. I think what everyone salivates about Kyle Dubas potentially coming to Ottawa if Toronto can't pull this out, and Dubas doesn't come back to Toronto. But Dubas's biggest fault is his contract negotiations, and I would say Pierre's biggest strength has been his contract negotiations. Like I don't know, I'd have to dig up the stats, but I think when Marner was up for his deal, he hadn't eclipsed 80 points yet. Like he wasn't a star, and he got 11.9 million, so or 10.9 million. So I think Duba like Pierre's contract negotiations have been great, and that's why I'm looking forward to this summer with DeBrincat if Dorion's in the fold because I have full confidence that he'll get a good contract done. Like I don't think that it's going to be this 8 times 9 thing that everyone thinks. I wrote about it in December actually when DeBrincat had his best stretch by far this season, and I was just talking about if new ownership comes in, and a lot of reports have been saying let's kick it to the summer when new ownership comes in. That's what DeBrincat might want to do too, is just see how it unfolds is signing bonuses. This has been a franchise that can't afford signing bonuses. So, and it's now a very hot topic in the league, especially with the low cap. It's okay, can I get upfront money and then have a lower salary throughout the year? I would say that if you can get DeBrincat to agree to a contract maybe around Timmy's number, maybe around Brady, like the 8.2, 8.3, then you would probably have to load it up with upfront money because like that would kind of take away from the cap it. I don't know if that's exactly how it works. That's my fan brain working for contract negotiations, but I would be curious to see Pierre be able to negotiate contracts under new ownership, right? I think that's a great point. And the problem for me with Pierre though is probably his demeanor when things aren't going well. And I will point to Ian Mendez's article in The Athletic a couple days ago, maybe last week, after that presser that Dorian had last on Monday. It was just essentially saying that Dorian needs to own this stretch, and Ian essentially wasn't buying this. We played meaningful games narrative, and it was a great article if you've got time over at The Athletic. And I just think that it's a good way to encapsulate the way that Dorian's gone about this tenure. It's been all sunshine and rainbows this season, but it shouldn't be. This is a year that they let it slip, man. They had November was brutal. He backed his coach when they were on a 7-game losing streak to open the season. And in March, when he made all those swings, they went 5-8-3. So, obviously there's a lot of mitigating factors. But I think my thing with Pierre is just when it's going bad, his quotes, like he's a meme when it's going poorly. He drops these bombs, like we're a team, all this. I'm a little bit tired of that. And I think that's just the way sports is, right? It's just it's a business and it's been the same voice for 7 years now. I'm a little bit sick of it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Pierre's been GM, I think he's the seventh longest tenured GM in the NHL right now, or sixth now after David Poile retired or whatever. But regardless, I think same with DJ. He's the seventh longest tenured coach, and it's like as much as we love these guys and we're looking at each individual year, and Pierre's been good lately. It's you kind of look at it, and if you're new ownership, right, and you don't have these personal ties to Pierre or DJ, you come in and you look at the numbers, and it's like, I mean, Jesus, even Anaheim just fired their coach, and they're on a rebuilding scale less than
And
us.
Columbus too.
Yeah, they just
Columbus, like
fired
the
him
two
too.
worst teams in the league, just
Yeah,
canned their
and they're
coaches.
both on rebuilding timelines. They were expected to be bad. They were not expected to be good. They had no expectations. They're a rebuilding team, both of them, and yet they still fired their coaches because ownership is probably holding them to a certain standard that they didn't meet, right? And I don't know what higher standard you could hold DJ and Pierre to. I mean, they just haven't, like, this year we basically said it's playoffs or bust. I wouldn't consider it playoffs or bust, but that was kind of the feeling going in, was like we need to at least be close, a few points out. And although they were better, like you said, they really let it slip away in November, and just that alone, most teams would have fired DJ right there at least. And potentially even Pierre. I mean, you just started the season after preaching all summer about how important a good start was. They went 1-10 in November, and the season was done. They were last in the league, 32nd overall, man. Like, come on, that's brutal. And I don't know, the leash has been extremely long. The leash has been very long. To even be in the top half of the league for length as a GM is kind of crazy. He took over in 2016, Pierre, I think. And I mean,
Yep.
a rebuild takes several years, but to be at the point we're at now, I'd just
Yeah.
be shocked if new ownership comes in after spending like $1 billion on the Sens and looks at it and is like, these guys have achieved nothing. Why would we keep them? We want to win,
Yeah.
right? Look at what Ryan Reynolds just did in Wrexham, how they just won. Does he come in and really think like DJ Smith and Pierre Dorian are the people to get us over the hump? I don't see it. I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the thing is, like, I would have been okay if Pierre, I mean, not okay, but I would have accepted, I guess, that if Pierre had just said the timeline for a rebuild changed because of COVID, I would have been okay with that. Everything changed because of the pandemic. Like the league has a flat cap now still 3 years later because of the pandemic. So I don't, I mean, it would have been a little bit of a lousy one considering all the other teams managed to improve and all that. But if he just said that, instead he just kind of dodged it and said, "We never guaranteed anything," when they did. And the late Eugene Melnick put out a 5-year unparalleled success plan from 2021 to 2025. And we're now sitting here in April 2023 talking about how this team hasn't made the playoffs in 6 years. So when you look at it from that lens, it's ridiculous. You talk about, I do think honestly Dorian's biggest fault will probably be hanging on to DJ too long, because you look at the 2021 season when admittedly they weren't making moves to try and be better. Dorian was pretty candid about that this summer, or this year, I should say. He said they brought in guys to be character guys and whatever, and that's okay. But again, that was essentially wasting a season. Like that, if you want to look at it like that as a GM, you're basically saying, yeah, we're gonna not tank, but we're just gonna try and get the culture better. Which is another thing I guess they should both be praised for, the culture in the room and the team, which has been drastically improved. But this is a business, we want results. So then you go to after 2021, brutal start. They had one win in like 11 games, 12 games to start the year. They were just the basement of the Canadian division. It was embarrassing. It was awful. It was their first games in 10 months. It was a joke. The next season, they get riddled with COVID and just fall off a cliff in November, never really get their feet back under them. Again, you can look at DJ at that point and just be like, look, it's time to go. We need a new voice, and you got to be able to do that. Oh, what happens this season? The exact same thing. After what you said in the summer, they were preaching a good start. They were preaching we need to have a better start, and they didn't. So I think that ultimately Dorian's biggest fault is going to be the fact that he held on to DJ Smith so long. I think that is by far, when in 10 years when we're looking back at this regime and this era of Sens hockey, it's going to be that these two guys were in these positions for so long with so little results.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, you go back and I'm sure Ian probably highlighted it too, but you can go back and find quotes from Pierre that are just damning, right? You can see it's like, he probably said something along the lines of, we can't have another start like that or a change is going to have to happen. And then they have another start and nothing happens. And it's just these white lies you're just saying to make people happy, right? You can't just say things in a business like this. So, like you said, it's a results oriented business. We are a little spoiled because if you think back to whenever it was with the Carlson and the Hoffman stuff and the taxi, the Uber, there were so many bad times, and the room is awesome. Even in a losing season, the amount of moments we had this year that were just truly made you tear up and were emotionally investable. There were so many. We were spoiled with that. And I do praise DJ a lot for that specifically because I think he's a great motivator. He keeps that culture sound in the room, right? There's no BS with him there. It's everybody is happy. The problem is that at what point do these 21 to 23-year-old guys start to realize, I'm in my prime now. I'm playing my best years of hockey, and we still aren't in the playoffs. Shabbat is what, 26, 27 now? He's almost out of his prime, for God's sake. Like, and he still hasn't. Yeah, he's played. I don't even think he ever played in the playoffs. So it's like, at what point do these guys start to feel frustrated and realize, as much as we love DJ and Pierre, I mean, we need to win. We want to win something. So that's kind of where I sit on it. And like I said, I just don't see how. I know I can convince myself that DJ and Pierre could be back based on what people say on Twitter. It's so easy to convince yourself, but I just don't see how new ownership comes in, analyzes the situation, because they'll run it down from top to bottom. What needs to change? What do we need to add? I don't see how they look at that, look at the numbers, and truly bring them back. I just don't see it, and I don't think that a lot of the players will be on board with it either.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting too. And I want to get to the players in a little bit just because I think that's ultimately they're the guys who have to get it done. But just final thing on Dorian and DJ, you're right. It's easy to convince yourself. Just there's a lot of obviously opinions out there, and I've definitely been in DJ's corner for most of this season, and I was at my breaking point in November. Very impressive how they managed to come back and like I just when they play well under him, especially this season, they were a hell of a team to watch. Like very entertaining. So I could get behind that. But you're right. Like everything you said, I completely agree with. Uh, it's just I think I'm done drinking the Kool-Aid. I think that was why my like you said, like all these off ice stories this season with the core and just like the feel good stuff, Giroux 1,000 points. It was all great, but it's like they're done in April again, and Brady Kachuk's sick of it too. And that kind of I just that was my takeaway from Dorian's presser, and I think that's why I appreciated Ian's article as well. Is like I'm not sitting here and going to soak up these feel good storylines anymore. I want results, and we absolutely have the right now to demand them. We had the right to demand them in 2021 or 2022, and now we're going into 2023, 24. So that's the vibe going in. So I wanted to ask about the players because, like I said, ultimately they're the ones who have to get it done, and they're the ones who you can have the best management team, the best coach in the league. But if the players don't get it done on the ice, you won't see any results. So, do you believe in this core? And it's a bit of a loaded question, but Leafs fans, one of my best friends is a Leafs fan, and like they're almost at their breaking point with this core, right? And it's this feeling of I feel bad if Dubas doesn't get the job because or keep the job because he's literally done everything in his power to make sure that this team succeeds on the ice. So I worry a little bit, I guess, just because of this timeline that they put themselves on now that once they get in the playoffs, this could be a team that just can't get it done and can't win in the first round. And then where are we in 5 years? You know what I mean? So do you believe that this core has what it takes in crunch time to get it done? And maybe if you saw anything this season that would help think that or help you think about that.
Yeah, I do. I definitely do believe in this core. I mean, honestly, I feel super strongly about the core. That's what keeps me going with the with Everyday Sens. That's what's kept me here for the last little while is that this core. And like you said, when they were on their game this year, I legitimately felt like they could take anybody. When they played well, there was a stretch in the middle, and I know they ranked since December 1st, they were 8th in the East with their record. So like they would have made the playoffs had it not been for that terrible November month. Even a couple more wins in that November month, they would have made the playoffs, which is what's so frustrating. But they were one of the better teams in the league for a stretch of the season in the middle, and it wasn't just 5 games. There was a stretch where it felt like they could beat Boston in the first round. They were that good. The inconsistency, I guess, can be expected with injuries and youth and everything. But I think when you see how good they can be, does that not provide faith? For me, that's like if they can be that good right now, if a 21-year-old Tim Stützle can lead the way on this team, imagine in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, this core is there. They are there, and they are going to be good. And I think comparing to Toronto is, I think they're going to have more depth than Toronto. Straight up, Toronto's got a lot of star power, but below they don't. I mean, they even traded for players this year, and they still are lacking depth a little bit, and should be losing in their playoff series. So, I don't know. I don't want to compare to Toronto too much because I know somehow the Leaf fans will find this and they'll come after me. But I definitely do believe in the core, and I think I mean I think keeping DeBrincat's a big part of that too because then it's just depth, right? You've got more guys. You can fill out the lineup. You can have two really good forward lines instead of one, and it just goes on like that. So far, I think they've done a great job of building. It'll just be on managing those assets and finding good depth players on the third, fourth line, bottom pairing down the line, and also saving cap there, right? You gotta save money there as well.
Yeah. I do also obviously believe in this core, and I guess it's more of a question is who is the core, right? Like they've got a lot of guys right now that are considered the core, but I think of probably their four best players, like Kachuk, Stutzel, um, Sanderson, and I'll throw Giroux in there just because for the short term, for sure, he's part of that. I would say those four guys this season were the biggest, like, wow, okay, they're legit. I don't want to. I compare to Toronto just because they're like the fear of building this juggernaut and not being able to get it done in the playoffs. And I mean, obviously, we'll see this year; they look pretty good right now. But I look at Colorado. I think Colorado is obviously just unbelievable. They've got two all world talents, and they've got Rantanen, who's a top 15 player in the world, probably. I just look at them and look at their rebuild timeline. They were the absolute. I think they were the worst team of all time, or something like that, in the 2017 year. They get Kill McCarr with that draft pick. Luckily, he falls to them after they get screwed by the lottery. But to me, what the biggest change for Colorado was after that season, Nathan McKinnon made a change, and he's been on podcasts and interviews and stuff talking about it. He just turned into a beast and this competitive beast. And to me, I look at Tim Stützle and I look at Jake Sanderson as those two guys. And like you mentioned, if Tim is 21 doing these things, leading the way in all situations, they're in a good spot. That's why I'm excited for him in the playoffs. I honestly think Jake Sanderson is the X factor. I think Jake Sanderson is the guy who's going to be the shutdown defenseman that they need. He might not be the top power play player. He might not be the guy who's going to get, 20 points in a playoff series or whatever the Oilers are doing all the time. I think that Jake Sanderson is going to be the guy who you look at and be like, that should be the Conn Smythe winner for the Ottawa Senators, just based on everything he did in this season. He played so well, and he seems like a guy who just thrives off the competition, just based on everything DJ says about him and Pierre Dorian says about him. So I have full confidence in, I guess, Stützle, Sanderson, and Tkachuk. Like that, those three guys are going to lead the way, and I think they have what it takes come playoff time.
Yeah, I love that take. That's my favorite take I've heard anybody say in a while. Just Jake Sanderson for the Conn Smythe in a playoff series. And I agree though. I think that it's almost bold, but it's not. I think Jake Sanderson in his prime will be right there with Tim as Ottawa's best player, quote unquote, right? And you even say like you might not be the top power play guy, but I think he could be. I think he could have the potential where I think even next season he could take Shabbat's spot on the first power play. I don't care if that's bold. With how Shabbat took a step back this year, in that regard. I mean, I think Sanderson, like I can't believe his offensive potential because he was drafted, and you know what they said when they picked him 5th overall? They said, and I quote, and I keep coming back to this: all of the analysts limited offensive potential. That's what they said, and that's why you shouldn't take him 5th overall. And already he had 32 points this year, which doesn't jump off the page, but it was increasing as the year went on. He averaged more than 25 minutes over the last 20 games, and he just thrived. He looks so good as a number one defenseman playing against the McDavids, the Pasternaks. Like, he's facing these guys constantly, right? He also led the team in average penalty killing minutes, by the way. So he did everything. He was a 5v5 specialist, a power play specialist, a penalty kill specialist. The list goes on. And by the way, he was 20 years old.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
like, oh my God, the potential there is just totally unbelievable. And yeah, I'm going to back you. This guy is going to be your Conn Smythe type player in the playoffs.
I think Travis Hamonic said it best. He's going to be a Norris candidate.
Yeah.
He's going to, and I think he said he's going to win multiple Norris trophies, or maybe and like that's then you're getting into just who's voting for who at what time. But anyway, I on Jake Sanderson again. You said that he led the team in penalty killing minutes?
Yeah, I believe he averaged 316 on the penalty kill per game.
Okay,
Which
and
is
they were a top 10 PK team this
yeah,
year, and he's a rookie. Like, it's ridiculous.
and a
Also,
20-year-old rookie.
right, he
Like,
had 12 penalty minutes, I believe. He had 12 penalty minutes, and I mean, you could go back and look at them. I would say half of them were just
well, that delay of
awful
game,
calls.
remember that? When
The delay of game.
he
I
was pissed.
remember.
He's like, "You just ended my penalty streak here. I was being
Yeah,
so
yeah.
disciplined."
I remember they had the game in Tampa where he got the high stick call. It wasn't his stick either. From then on, I think he went 38 games without a penalty. And I tweeted about like this guy should be getting Lady Bing consideration. That game he got a penalty, so I was like, all right. But like to be a rookie, play those minutes and not get penalties like that, like it's absolutely nuts. As a defensive guy, getting all these defensive zone starts, that's why I'm looking at it like in the playoffs on the road, you're not scared to throw that guy out. And at home, you're throwing him out against the best players. And I think he even said it. He said, I got confidence, which is this if the rest of the league gets scared, because he said knowing I can defend the best players in the league gave me confidence. And this is a player now who's going into a summer. He's gonna have a full summer of training. He's healthy. He wasn't healthy last summer and he still came in. He's going to be a fully healthy player this summer coming into training camp next year. I think this guy is going to make an absolute storm next season, offensively, defensively. And I think wherever he goes to, just to wrap up on Sanderson here, because we could talk about him. This could be a Jake Sanderson podcast. Um, I think wherever he goes, he takes a season to kind of get his feet wet, work on the defensive stuff, and then the second season gets more confident offensively. And he even talked about that this year. He said when he got injured, I think he was talking to Daniel Alfredson, who was in and around the rink, just about offensive game and stuff like that. And that's a whole other discussion we can get into at a later date about Alfredson coming back into the fold and everything with new ownership. But that's just like you hear that stuff, and we mentioned the feel good stuff off the ice and how I'm kind of not drinking the Kool-Aid anymore. That to me isn't in that category because that's just a gamer. That's Jake Sanderson being an absolute gamer, and that's exciting to think about. Um, so with Jake Sanderson, I mean, they have a stud. They're set up for years. Um, just quickly, I guess before we wrap up, would you sign him this summer, and what would you sign him to if they can get that done? Because I believe Dorian maybe alluded to trying to get something done this summer, kind of what they do with Stutzel. Like, what would you pay him right now going into? I guess it would kick in the 2024-25 season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great chance. Like with Timmy, how they got him signed to that. I mean, Sanderson's younger, so it's a little different. I don't know if he's gonna want to um, sign right away for that long. But because I mean, if he waits till next season, after next season, I bet you this guy's gonna be worth like $11 million more or more. So, I don't know. Right now, I'd straight up offer him 8x8 and be like, how do you feel about that? Because if he's willing to take something like that, because again, I don't know too. He seems like the type of guy. He's very humble, right? If you've ever like, seen him talk and I know Brad Barry, his coach at UND, they always talked about how this guy would go to bed at like 9 o'clock. He's so responsible. He's this like absolute humble guy who doesn't mess around. So I do wonder if he'd be willing to take not less like a cheap deal, but I know there are players, and especially if you want to be a competitive team, and he is a competitive guy, maybe he takes an 8x8, and he's like, and I mean that's a big number, but for him in the future, I almost guarantee it will be a small number. So I wonder if he'd be willing to take something like that. I'd offer it to him, see how he feels. Um, if he doesn't want to sign, he doesn't want to sign, but I definitely would try and get that done. Also, for people watching on YouTube, this is Jake Sanderson right here. The little edit I made and printed off after his World Junior performance where he was a literal machine. So I got him in the background. It's a good time for it. If you're not watching on YouTube, then I guess you're going to have to because you got to see it.
If you are watching on YouTube as well, obviously, I'm gonna have a better studio set up in a little bit. I'm just moving back to Ottawa, so I'm moving things around, getting everything set up. But it will be exciting. That's a pretty good start, though. I got the standards been set. I mean, I remember that edit, but I was looking at it because I can't really see the face just from this far out, and I thought it was just the cyborg from the Justice League. And I mean, hey, but if that's Jake Sanderson, that's awesome. And it's true, he's a robot. He's an absolute robot out there. All right, Brennan. I think that's good for our first episode. I think we've hit on a lot of things, and obviously, as the off season goes on, as news drops, we're gonna get more involved in everything that's going on in Sens land. Just I guess quickly before I meant to ask you this earlier, who do you like in the first round? Who's your Stanley Cup pick this season? We're now I think everyone's played Game 3, with Game 4 is happening today. So after 3 games in each round, who do you like? Who are you disappointed in?
Yeah, I'm not quite as invested as everybody else seems to be. I have trouble watching when it's not the Sens. I'm like I like to watch the Leafs lose. And last night I had the game on and they won in overtime and it was awfully disappointing. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. But I don't know. I know they're a rival, but I like Boston. Boston just seems like a juggernaut to me. I mean, I hope they beat Florida too. After all those fans or my mentions, I just have a dislike for Florida now. So I like Boston. I like the Rangers. I don't even know about out west, honestly. Not Edmonton. I know everybody likes Edmonton. I think that your pick's Edmonton, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I've been. Man, they're playing. I've got a little soft spot for Edmonton because I was born there. My family's from out there, so that's it. And also, it's easy to watch every one of their games just because of number 97 and 29. But they've been very good. Just unlucky, I would say, which is frustrating in a playoff series. And they're now down 2-1. But I mean, I think it'll turn around for them in this series. I think they could win the next 3 straight. But, yeah, a bit disappointed in the Oilers right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't looked too far into their team, I guess, but yeah, McDavid, I mean, you could definitely make a case for like they have Connor McDavid, so I'm gonna pick them, right? I mean, I could definitely do that. But yeah, I don't know. From what I've seen, I like Boston. I mean, I don't like Boston, but I like Boston as a playoff winner and a competitor. They're just a deep team. That's a team that you can kind of base yourself off of for depth. Just finding guys who don't cost a whole lot, but you can play and are legitimately effective. I love their defense. Brandon Carlo's a great guy. I was kind of hoping the Sens would trade for at one point. Um, but yeah, other than that, I just wanted to also say before we left today, we're probably gonna try and do like a members podcast too, or like at least get members involved. I know I recently asked for members to submit hot takes on the Instagram story, and we could do an episode on that or something too. We've got a bunch of those, so yeah, we'll probably try and do that whenever we can too. We're gonna figure it all out. We'll keep you guys updated, but yeah, other than that, I just wanna thank everybody again for the support on the website and on the socials, and excited to have Jack on board because think we've got a lot of potential here, and just creating something for Sens fans, right? That's been my goal, is just to create something for Sens fans, a platform where they can all, you know, just raise our fandom together. So I think as the team progresses, we're gonna progress too. But yeah, everybody subscribing and stuff makes a big difference. So uh, Jack, excited to have you on, anyways, and I guess we'll wrap up here today.
Yeah, it's we're excited, and this is obviously a downtime in Sens hockey. I think once the summer starts and more news comes out, we'll hit the ground running here, and we're excited. I can't be happier to hop on here. So for Brendan and for myself, thank you for listening to the first ever episode of the Everyday Sens podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, or on YouTube, and go watch on YouTube if you want to just look at us having a good time. Then head over to the YouTube page, and we will see you guys later this week, I believe, and go from there.